Greetings, ladies and gentlemen of the internet. This is Rock and Roll Spot coming at you with our first installment of what is being tentatively called at this point The Great Debate. Should a better title arise, it will be changed to that. But for now, we're going to stick with The Great Debate because that's the best I could come up with. Most of what we'll be doing in this is comparing and contrasting upsides and downsides of two similar things. For the first one, and this is actually going to be the first part of this, this is actually one of those topics that will carry over for a few videos. Marvel Comics and DC Comics, usually referred to as the Big Two. I guess we'll be focusing upon the comic side of things as opposed to movies, TV, or anything else. Now, we're going to start off with the cons, and keep in mind, some of these cons are not entirely cons, and some of them, and all of them, are my own personal opinion and biases. I'm a fan of both companies. I will admit that I think both have made mistakes. Both have done great things. Anywho, start with DC and on the con side of things. First off, and it still does fairly seems this way to me to a degree, not as much anymore, but there seems to be quite the focus upon the mantle of a hero rather than the hero himself. For example, when the Silver Age started in the late 50s. It was with the debut of the Barry Allen Flash, the Hal Jordan Green Lantern. That was the point where people said, okay, this is the new age of comics. Before that, you had Jay Garrick as Flash, Alan Scott as Green Lantern, and they were totally different characters. They got their powers from different sources, and eventually those characters were brought back in to basically say, hey, look, yeah, they're still out there. Now, a passing of a mantle is not always done as a means of saying, hey, new character, like, same name, new character, new everything. Now, for example, Batman. Batman has, when it comes to major events in comic history, Batman has, on a few occasions, had to relinquish. Well, Bruce Wayne has had to relinquish the mantle of the Bat on a few occasions. For example, most notably during the Nightfall storyline of the 90s, wherein the villain Bane broke Batman's back, and Bruce named as Jean-Paul Valley, who at the time was Azrael, as his successor. Well, while he went, this was while Bruce went to recuperate and recover, and yeah. Well, Jean-Paul went a little nuts, and he just kind of got nuttier, and well, he started off nuts, and he just got nuttier during his tenure as Batman. And eventually, Bruce had to come back and take him down. And after that, he passed along the mantle to Dick Grayson for a while, so that Bruce would finish recovering. Then, after the events of Final Crisis, Bruce Wayne was dead, and eventually, Nightwing, Dick Grayson, took over as Batman. So it's not always a case of, there's a means of saying, okay, we're starting new on everything. There's sometimes it's a case of, this is the story. This is the story we're telling. DC's constant reboots. That is a huge thing to me. Keep in mind that in the last 30 years, DC has rebooted their continuity on at least 4 occasions. 4. In 30 years. The first time was with the comic book epic known as Crisis on Infinite Earths. It's probably one of the greatest comic stories ever. It pretty much involved every DC character at the time, and it had things happened that were important. Characters died. Supergirl and the Flash, well, hell, the entire DC multiverse was obliterated because of it. And things started new. Yes, in many cases, you had a continuation of things. That's something else we'll get into later. For example, after Crisis, Flash was now, basically acknowledged that Wally West, or Barry Allen had died, and now Wally West was the Flash. But also, you had a miniseries which completely retold the origin of Superman, and that was to be his origin from then on out. So, of course, changed again on numerous occasions, but yeah. Then 10 years later, you had Zero Hour, which it still was a hitting of the reset button, but not as massively a hit. 10 years after that came Infinite Crisis, which was basically considered to be a sequel to Crisis on Infinite Earths, and Infinite Crisis brought back the multiverse, though not as large. In fact, it was only 52 Earths, but still, there was now a multiverse again. Then I'm not sure if Final Crisis actually had a hitting of the reset button or not. I know part of the story involves kind of going back to a specific point, saying, okay, things are better now. But I can't remember. I'm not entirely sure if there were major changes in DC history because of the events of Infinite Crisis or Final Crisis. Then a few years after that came Flashpoint, which ushered in the New 52. Now, reboots can be a double-edged sword. On the one hand, you've got readers who've been following things for a good long while, and suddenly it's like, oh, everything's just great. The stories I've been reading for the past decade, do they matter? Or are they just, are they no longer part of the primary history now? But at the same time, on the plus side, these can actually be beneficial to new readers. Sometimes. A prime example is the New 52. If you were new into comics and looking at interested more in DC back in 2011, in the fall, that was an excellent time to jump in because, by and large, everything was new. New histories, new origins, everything. And in fact, this is actually generally not entirely the case. Usually you have a lot of reboots where things just kind of go back to, it's like, okay, well, yeah, we got some changes. We'll explain the changes away later. We'll say what the change, what's changed, expository dialogue and whatnot. And because it would never be anything huge, it would just be little things like, oh well, for example, before Infinite Crisis, Thomas and Martha Wayne were murdered by an unknown gunman. This was at least how things were between Zero Hour and Infinite Crisis. Then after Infinite Crisis, oh no, it was Joe Chill, which was a way of lining up with Christopher Nolan's Batman movies. But now I couldn't tell you who did it or not. I haven't read up on a lot of the New 52 stuff just because I'm not sure what matters anymore. Does Hush matter? Did Nightfall happen? Did the Killing Joke happen? Which that's always a big question mark there, is whether or not the Killing Joke is part of history or not. And then there's just things like if you have a 5-year timeline, how have there been at least 4 Robins? Anyways, moving on. Oh, crud. File cards, everybody. Now, actually, a prime example of reboots picking up where things left off. The New 52, Green Lantern. Before the New 52, the Green Lantern books were going through a major story arc, and they concluded it just in time for the final issue, the last issue before the restart. And that set the stage for how things were in the restart. Sinestro was back to being a Green Lantern. Hal was out before having killed the Guardian. Yeah. Now another problem I have with DC is the number of forefront of power level characters in the forefront. Now, hey, both companies have pantheons, and when I say pantheon, I mean pantheons. The Greeks are used on both. Hercules has popped up in both. You get the idea. But characters like Marvel tends to keep characters like that off to the side. Now, yeah, Thor is a forefront character anymore. The Hulk, but really, that's it. Whereas with DC, you've got Superman, Wonder Woman, Captain Marvel / Shazam / Captain Thunder, or whatever they're calling him this time around. Supergirl, Power Girl. It's the kind of thing where there are a lot of characters with these levels, and even then, it depends on the writer too. But that's one of my gripes. It's hard to me. It's hard to be concerned about a character who, is basically a god. It's like, oh well, you're a god. There's not much that really can do you harm. Anyways, I think I've bashed DC enough. So let's some of the good things. First off, their characters age. The Teen Titans, for example, the original 5. Each one has gone from being a sidekick to being a hero in their own right, and in some cases, taking over the mantle of the hero they were a sidekick for originally. Dick Grayson, Wally West, Donna Troy. The 3 of them have at some point taken on the mantle of whichever hero they were a sidekick for. In fact, on 2 occasions, Dick Grayson's been Batman, as mentioned before. Wally West became Flash after Crest on Infinite Earths, making him the first to actually graduate. And after Infinite Crisis, Donna Troy was briefly Wonder Woman. But yeah, characters age, and I think that's great. The adults are pretty much it's going to be one of those things where their age is always just going to wait a second, but you. So there are gray areas there, like Superman. How old is Clark supposed to be? Batman. How old is Bruce Wayne supposed to be? Also, DC's multiverse actually matters. At least it has for the last decade. Now, admittedly, before Infinite Crisis, there were many an Elseworlds title published. One of the most noteworthy ones being Kingdom Come, which was written by Mark Waid and painted by Alex Ross. It's a wonderful story. It's a dystopian future. The heroes have all retired. The heroes we know they've all retired, and the new guard is messing everything up. They're killing villains in cold blood. like they're screwing up, and they're not having any remorse about their actions, and so the old guard feels the need to step in and say, "Hey, that's not how you be a hero." And after Infinite Crisis, the Earth in which Kingdom Come takes place on is now part of the DC multiverse. Same with the Earth that Wildstorm the Wildstorm characters inhabit. Now, even better is the fact that now the Wildstorm characters are, at least character concepts, are being pushed into the DC universe as a whole. The concept of Team 7, the character Grifter, Voodoo, Michael Cray, aka Deathblow, various others are actually existing out in the DC universe, which is great. And admittedly, some of them are different. In fact, they're all fairly different from how they were in the Wildstorm universe, but they're there, which is great. There's more I can say for the independent, the small publisher that Marvel picked up. Anyways, speaking of Marvel, let's move on to them. First off, this is a more recent issue I have with Marvel, and that's constant restarts. In the last 3 years, there have been 2 Avengers #1s. And I'm not saying that, they now have 2 titles called Avengers. No. I mean that in the aftermath of Siege, they restarted the Avengers. And then, about a year and a half ago or so, they ended the book they were currently on, and then restarted the next month. In the last 7 years, we have had 3 new Avengers #1s. Now, with Avengers, there was really no reason to, except to just to jump on the Marvel Now bandwagon and say, "Hey, Marvel Now, #1, see, huh? Yeah, #1, first issue." With new Avengers, the Avengers titles all started over after the Siege. Of course, there weren't that many to start over, and in fact, Mighty Avengers came to an end for a good long while. But new Avengers restarted after Siege. It was initially started after Avengers Disassembled, and it was supposed to be, this is the new concept for the Avengers, which, in all honesty, was very similar to Justice League. You had some of the biggest names in Marvel Comics, character-wise: Captain America, Iron Man, Wolverine, Spider-Man. And you also had some not-so-big names. That continued, and then they became after the Civil War, they kind of became they were the anti-registration Avengers. Then came the Siege, then came Secret Invasion, and they were the Avengers who were trying to fight Norman Osborn's Dark Reign head on. And then after the Siege, which was the first time the series actually restarted, they were kind of the street-level Avengers team. Then, after a while, it was replaced. The lineup the book focused on the Illuminati, which is a group of Marvel heroes, each one with being significant having significant influence in certain areas. Initially, Charles Xavier over mutants, Iron Man with the Avengers, Mr. Fantastic with the Fantastic Four, Doctor Strange for magic, so on and so forth. But now that's the point where it's kind of like, okay, I guess I can get behind a new #1. But in all honesty, you could simply just say, hey, new creative team, new direction, or keep the street level thing going and just restart things with I don't know, Mighty Avengers. Have a Mighty Avengers restart, as Mighty Avengers have been over for quite some time at that point. And, just, okay, hey, yeah. Or just do a series called The Illuminati. Another problem, Marvel's multiverse is largely ignored. There are some exceptions. First off, especially in the 80s and 90s, there was a title called What If. Actually, there were two separate titles. Anyways, What If usually was a case of, well, let's take the end result of a classic story and say, what if it had gone this way instead? For example, what if Phoenix had lived? You get the idea. Sometimes there's little things like, what if Venom bonded with the Punisher, or sometimes it was little things. Sometimes it was big things. But people just weren't reading it, and consider the fact that they tend to just kind of change things up so that they would just kind of say, well, for example, with Jean Grey, and Jean's dead, give her a few issues, she'll be back, which admittedly I will grant them that they've shown remarkable restraint in not bringing her back entirely, at least. But that was, for a while, the only place we saw the multiverse. Another exception were the last 3 versions of Exiles. Exiles, as the title of a book, was kind of brought over from, the small publisher that Marvel purchased in the 90s. When they once they restarted the Exile series, they gave it the concept of various characters pulled from their own specific realities, and then put them all together and said, okay, you go from Earth to Earth, fixing problems there. We were given one character that we definitively knew, and that was the Age of Apocalypse version of Blink. And then we ended up we got all these new versions of characters that were all actually quite interesting. For example, Mimic as an actual mutant. There was the son of Rogue and Magneto, Magnus. And sometimes they did little humor stories, like the Legion of Wolverines, wherein the team's on vacation, so their bosses see a problem in the multiverse, and just start throwing Wolverines at it. Yeah, and you pretty much end up seeing at one point every possible version that could even eventually be thought of Wolverine. Sometimes it was, for example, there was the Weapon, Wolverine just escaped from Weapon X. You had Wolverine just discovering his powers, Patch, Albert and LCD, the robots that were frenemies of Wolverines for a good long while. It was insane. It was great though. It was just a fun 2 issues and done. Another exception is most likely is this summer's upcoming Secret Wars event, wherein various alternate Marvel Earths will be merged into one battle world, and things, from the sounds of it, it's going to basically be Crisis on Infinite Marvels, and we'll see. Now, this actually leads me to the next complaint I had with Marvel. That's event-to-event storytelling. And for a while, DC was just as bad about this. What is event-to-event storytelling, you ask? Well, that's basically when you end one event, and rather than have things end and have aftermath and things changing and moving on, and years of stories told before. Oh, another event. No. This goes event. The event ends. Oh, when we have set up the next event for the next year's event, and then here we have a little micro event too, and we're going to keep. But everything's building for this next event too. Oh, look, here's the next event. That's and I gotta give DC props for not actually doing that after Flashpoint, because they had been doing that for a while. It was event. After Flashpoint, they spent almost 3 years without doing an event. Sure, they had built up to Forever Evil. They had crossovers, but not gigantic crossovers that involved everybody, but just little. Okay, we'll have a crossover with this family of books. For example, Batman: Death of the Family, Justice League, Trinity War. Anyways, moving on. Another problem with Marvel is 75 years of history, which, for the most part, pretty much all counts. Yeah, there have been retcons over the years that have said, "Oh, well, this actually is this," or no, but Marvel has never yet, though it's rumored they might do so this summer. Marvel has never hit the reset button. You said, "Okay, we're starting fresh. This is how things are now." And my final quibble with Marvel is, well, I mentioned how DC bought a small publisher and actually utilizes it. Marvel bought out Malibu Comics in the 90s. At the time, Malibu was actually starting to generate some buzz through a group of books set in the Ultraverse. And after Marvel bought it, they started doing little crossovers, which included the second Exiles title. This was before the title that featured Blink and various other characters. But this title actually had characters from the Ultraverse and characters from the Marvel Universe together. You had Juggernaut leading a team of heroes, it was different. And then, but eventually, as I understand, there are actually legal reasons why they can't use it, but it's the kind of, it would be nice if those legal reasons could be found a way around or whatever, just because, more characters to play with, more toys to put into the sandbox, but whatever. Anywho, moving on to the pros. First off is the fact that continuity actually does, to a degree, matter. This is the upside of the 75 years of history. The fact that, for the most part, all that, if you've been reading for a while, you don't have to worry about, wait a minute, does that story that I read all those years ago still count? But at the same time, if you're just, it does hurt if you're just getting into things. It makes it hard, which is part of why the whole Marvel Now thing exists. And why there are so many retcons. In fact, a lot of the retcons are not all that necessary, but whatever. Mantles, they rarely get passed. In fact, if a character characters generally keep the same secret identity. If anything, maybe, okay, well, I'm gonna change my name from Captain Dude to Dude Smasher. Usually be things like that. There's a plethora of Marvel characters who have multiple code names under their belt. But there are times when mantles do get passed on. For example, Captain America has passed along the mantle of being Captain America on multiple occasions. In the 80s, in fact, he passed along to John Walker, he went on because he disagreed with the government. Then Walker went a little off the reservation, and, well, they said, "Hey, you know what, Captain? Can you come back and take this guy down for us? Of course, Walker then became a trusted ally, but that's not the point. After Civil War, Cap was dead, and eventually Bucky took over as Captain America, and that was actually pretty cool. Then Bucky died again, and Steve took over the mantle, took back the cowl and shield. And now, as he's getting old, the Falcon has taken over, which, okay. And in fact, he's got his own look for it, which is really quite cool. Also, you tend to have families of books which tend to be fairly isolated, which in fact, actually, DC does tend to do the same thing. But when a crossover hits, that's when things get a little kinky. Marvel, more often than not, the families of books will be doing their own thing, but we'll have a tie-in miniseries say, okay, here's what's going on with these characters. Unless they are in the main book. Actually, original Sin had an interesting way of doing the whole, these are the characters involved, rather than have it be, oh well, this team's involved mainly, and then we have these other teams involved on the side. It was, okay, we have characters from this team, that team, and that other team all involved, and yeah. And some examples of the families of books. You have the X-Men books, you have the Avengers books, Spider-Man books, and so on and so forth. And finally, power levels. The fact that, yes, there are gods in the Marvel Universe. The Norse pantheon, the Greek pantheon. I think pretty sure the Roman pantheon also has popped up at some point. There's also cosmic characters that are just, for example, Thanos, especially when he's packing the gauntlet. I mean, hey, that's pretty scary right there. But the thing of it is that until recently, Thanos is a villain that every now and again, yeah, he pops up and he's a big deal, and then he goes back to just kind of saying, I'm chill. I'll cool out. I'll just chill out here in space. I'm not going to do nothing. I'm in space. Because space. But then he gets bored. Because space. And yeah, Thor is a forefront character. Especially thanks to the Marvel Studios films. But he's always been, to a degree, a forefront character. And that being said, he's still, the Hulk, give him a run for his money. That was not exaggerated about. The Hulk in general, but the Hulk has, depending upon the version of the Hulk we're talking about at the time, the Hulk does have a massive disadvantage of being dumb. But yeah, you don't have, all these high power level characters that are, like I said, in the forefront. Captain America? No, he's basically just the pinnacle of what a man can be. Iron Man, smart as a whip. Take out the suit, no powers. Put him in the suit. Oh, what can't he do? But you don't, like I said, you just don't have those characters with, who could just fly into space and destroy a moon in the forefront. The closest that ever was to that was the Sentry, and in fact, the Sentry is currently dead. Last I looked. Well, actually, last I looked, he had been reincarnated as a Horseman of Apocalypse, but yeah. Or a Horseman of the Apocalypse twins, I should say. And but yeah, you don't have massive numbers of characters who can go toe to toe with gods and brush it off. Like I said, in the forefront. Yes, they do exist. Hell, Hercules. But even then, Hercules is kind of like, okay, well, Thor is a god, Hercules is a demigod. But the thing is, they're both actually the main advantage that Thor really has is the hammer and lightning. The two of them are actually pretty equally matched power-wise when it comes to getting close. But again, Hercules doesn't have a hammer that brings forth thunder, lightning, so on and so forth. Plus, he can't fly, like at all. But yeah, that's I guess really that's all I've got for now. We'll probably continue this series. Probably have part 2 up next month. As always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. The link, you can follow me on social media. Links to my Facebook page and Twitter page are both down below. And this is Rock and Roll Spock signing off. As always, live long, rock hard.